You know, senior living has got to be one of the toughest, most personal industries in real estate. We're talking high costs, intense regulations, and of course, huge emotional stakes for families. So how does a company not just survive in that environment, but actually thrive for half a century and become a powerhouse on the East Coast? Well, today we're going to unpack the 50-year journey of Brightview Senior Living. And it's a story that starts somewhere completely different and ends with them totally redefining what it means to call a place home for thousands of seniors. All right, let's get into it. So, at the very heart of this whole story is this one simple idea. Seriously, this isn't just some catchy slogan they slap on a brochure. It is the core principle that has shaped every big decision they've ever made. From who they hire to how they design their multi-million-dollar communities, this is the key, right here, to understanding everything else. And that's the real question, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to have a nice motto. It's a whole other challenge to turn that into a business that crushes it, earning the #1 spot from Fortune as the best place to work in its field 4 years in a row. So how on earth did they do it? To find the answer, we have to jump in the time machine and go way back.
And here's the crazy part. The DNA of Brightview, what makes it tick, was formed long before the company was even a glimmer in anyone's eye. The skills, the values, even the leadership team. It was all forged in a totally different part of the real estate universe.
Our story doesn't start in some fancy senior community. Nope, it starts in the world of affordable and multifamily housing.
It all kicks off back in 1977, when the Shelter Group gets its start in Baltimore. 5 years later, a young Marilynn comes on board as the company's very first employee. For almost 2 decades, their whole world was developing and managing apartments. But then, in 1995, the game totally changes. Arnie Richmond, a guy who knows the nursing home industry inside and out, joins the team. And that combination, his healthcare smarts and their real estate muscle, created something new and powerful.
So you gotta understand, this is the key. Before they ever served a single meal to a senior, the Shelter Group got a masterclass in the nitty-gritty of managing massive properties. We're talking 22,000 apartments at their peak. Think about that. They learned everything about regulations, maintenance, and logistics the hard way. It was the perfect, if totally unintentional, training ground for what was coming next. Okay, so they've got this solid foundation in real estate and this new expertise in healthcare. The leadership team saw a huge opportunity on the horizon, and it was time for a major pivot.
In the mid-90s, they saw what everyone else saw. The baby boomers were getting older. A demographic tidal wave was coming. But here's the thing. Instead of just building more of those sterile, clinical nursing homes that Arnie Richmond knew so well, they had a different vision. They imagined something that felt less like a hospital and more like a high-end hotel.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting because this shows their big innovation. Back then, if you wanted high-end senior living, you were probably looking at what's called a CCRC, and that meant writing a massive check, often hundreds of thousands of dollars, as an entrance fee you'd never see again. Brightview said no way. They went with a simple monthly rental, just like an apartment. It made it way more accessible, gave residents flexibility, and put all the pressure on Brightview to prove their value month after month. And bam! In 1999, that vision became a reality. The very first Brightview community opened up in Bel Air, Maryland. This wasn't just another building. It was their whole new business model brought to life. It was the prototype that would set the stage for everything that followed.
So, they had a model that worked. The next step? Expansion. But building these places wasn't a walk in the park. More often than not, it meant gearing up for a fight.
So what does Brightview do? They choose a strategy that sounds kind of crazy. Instead of building where it was easy, they went for the hardest markets you can imagine. Wealthy suburbs where there's no land and the zoning laws are super strict. Why would they do that? Well, they knew that if they could win the brutal fight to get a project approved there, they'd basically be protected from any competition down the road. High risk for sure, but also high reward. And Wakefield, Massachusetts is the perfect example of this fight. Their plan hit a brick wall of opposition from locals worried about traffic and drainage. It got so heated that a town-wide election actually shot down their plan. But they didn't pack up and go home. Nope. Brightview went back to the drawing board, bought the property right next door, and sat through another 10 months of intense public hearings until, finally, they got the green light. Talk about persistence. So, to win these battles, they came up with this brilliant design strategy. You could call it architectural mimicry. Instead of just plopping a generic building down, they made it fit in. In Canton, Massachusetts, they built something that looks just like a grand New England Victorian mansion. In the city of Bethesda, Maryland, they went modern and even included a 7-story public art installation. They were so dedicated to this that in Greenburgh, New York, they actually worked with the town to create a brand new zoning law just for their project.
Okay, so they figured out how to win the outside game of building and zoning. But their real secret sauce, their true competitive advantage, that was all about the inside game, their company culture.
Hey, remember that philosophy from the beginning? Well, here are the receipts. A jaw-dropping 91% of their own employees, the people in the trenches every single day, say Brightview is a great place to work. Let that sink in. In an industry that is notorious for burnout and high turnover, a number like that is practically a unicorn.
And it's not just them patting themselves on the back. This obsession with culture earned them the ultimate prize, being ranked the #1 large employer in their entire industry by Fortune magazine. Not once, but 4 straight years. This is what it looks like when you truly put culture first.
So you're probably asking, how do they actually do it? Well, it's not magic, it's a system. First, they hire for attitude and values, not just for a resume. Then, every single employee gets what's called an individual development plan to help them grow. And the result of all that? An incredible 41% of all their director-level jobs are filled by people who started at the company in entry-level roles. They don't just give people jobs, they build careers.
But, a great culture and a smart business model are one thing. How do they perform when the world gets turned completely upside down? Well, Brightview has been through the fire 3 different times.
First up was the 2008 financial crash. While other parts of the real estate market just imploded, Brightview's needs-based model held strong. Then, in 2017, they made a massive decision to sell their entire original affordable housing business to go all in on senior living. But the biggest test of all, of course, was COVID-19. They moved fast, bringing in wage protection and hero pay for their staff, and they came up with clever ideas like hallway programming to keep residents connected even when they were isolated. Each crisis was a test, and each time, they came out the other side stronger.
And that brings us right up to today. After navigating all those decades of change and challenges, how is Brightview looking as it heads into its next chapter? Well, their blueprint for the future looks incredibly solid. They pulled off a super smooth leadership change from their longtime CEO, Marilynn to Doug Dallenberg Jr. They've teamed up with huge investment firms like Morgan Stanley to get the cash they need for growth. Their newest buildings are aiming for top-tier sustainability ratings like LEED Gold. And the pipeline is active, with brand new communities set to open in 2025 in places like New Jersey and Virginia. So, at the end of the day, when you look back at this whole 50-year epic, from managing apartments to fighting zoning battles to surviving a global pandemic, what's the one lesson that sticks? I think it's that in a business that's all about bricks and mortar, the strongest foundation you can build isn't made of concrete, it's made of culture. Because a great place to work really does become a great place to live.